Hello. Today I continue with The Art of Being and Becoming by Hazrat Inayat Khan. I'm on the chapter 2 called Personality. Harmony is brought about by attuning oneself to all beings, to all things, to all conditions, to all situations. He who cannot attune himself tries to tune others, and in setting about tuning others, he breaks the string. It is as if a person with a violin in his hands tried to tune the cello. If he wishes to be in tune with the cellist, he must tune his violin to the cellist's pitch. Every soul, as is its nature, constantly seeks harmony, for rarely is there to be found a soul who really knows how to create it. If someone says the noise that always goes on close to my ears drives me mad, he cannot stop the noise. He must know how to close himself to that noise. If he cannot close himself to accustom himself to it, so it no longer creates inharmony. It is very difficult to evolve oneself, and at the same time, to keep in tune with the uninvolved ones through life. It is like being drawn from above and at the same time being pulled from below. And if there is anything that can save man from being torn to pieces in life, there is only one way, and that is to resound, to respond to all that is asked of him. It is this principle that was taught by Christ in the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount may seem to teach willing surrender to all, but that is not the way to look at it. The real lesson that one can learn from it is to try and harmonize with all instead of with one note. As every note is fixed in its place, so is every man fixed in his ideas and ways. But the one who treads the spiritual path is all notes, and he is no note in particular. Therefore, he may rightly be called the keynote, the note which makes a consonant chord with every note that is played with it. There is no beauty where there is no harmony. Harmony is the fruit of love. Therefore, by attaining harmony in life, one reaches the perfection of all three: love, harmony, and beauty. Chapter 3: The Purification of the Heart. The real purity is experienced not by means of outer ablutions, nor by keeping away evil thoughts, but by keeping the heart pure from feelings that disturb the rhythm of the mind and thus upset the whole spirit. Feelings have a greater power than thoughts. If evil thoughts are monsters, evil feelings are demons. Such feelings as the desire to rob someone of his rights or his belongings have a very disturbing effect upon the spirit. Before such a feeling is put into action, the effect is greater. While it is being acted upon, it is less, but afterwards, the effect is greatest. Life, rightly and honestly lived, has inner struggles, but by adding to it feelings that disturb life's tranquility, one only adds to one's troubles in life, which then become endless. Purity of heart must not be considered a virtue, but a necessity. A necessity not only to be considered for the good of others, but for one's own life. The main thing that must be remembered is that the soul is pure, and it cannot bear the lack of purity without feeling restless. The spirit has a tune and a rhythm. When it is out of tune and out of rhythm, though the riches of the whole world be given to it, it is worth nothing. It is purity and peace, which are the soul's constant seeking. As rust is natural to iron, and as milk turns sour, so the feeling of the heart, which by nature is as pure as milk, turns when it becomes rusted. Then nothing in the world is tasteful to a person, and life with all its beauty becomes worthless. This condition must be avoided. An adept must keep his mind pure from rust. The rust comes from allowing the heart to bear malice and spite against anyone, by having hatred and prejudice against anyone, by wanting to take revenge, by looking down upon another with contempt, and by the feelings of jealousy, rivalry, or envy. The heart wants constant care to keep it from getting rusted. For the nature of this life of illusion is such that the heart may be affected by little unimportant things that are not of the least value coming from the outer life, and rust may be produced as the mere touch of water can produce rust upon iron. Once the feeling has become soured, it is difficult, if not impossible, to turn it sweet again, as it is impossible to make sour milk sweet. A soul has brought from heaven its love for sweetness. It may, after coming on earth, develop a taste for salt, sourness, or bitterness, but its innate longing is always for the sweet. What its life needs most is not sugar, which is required in some degree for physical health, but the sweetness that is the original property of the heart and is needed most for the true happiness and real well-being. The process of purifying the heart does not differ very much from the process of cleaning or washing any object. Water poured upon any object washes it, and if there is a spot that cannot be washed away by water, some substance that can take that spot away is applied to wash it thoroughly. The water that washes the heart is the continual running of the love stream. When that stream is stopped, when its way is blocked by some object that closes the heart, when the love stream is no longer running, then the mind cannot remain pure. As water is the cleansing and purifying substance in the physical world, so is love on the higher plane. Sometimes when it is difficult for love to take away impressions that are disagreeable, that block the way of the love stream, they may be washed away by some element that can destroy them. The whole life is a chemical process, and knowledge of its chemistry helps man to make life happy. An unhappy person, being unhappy himself, cannot make others happy. It is the wealthy person who can help the one who is hard up, not the poor person, however much desire the latter may have to help. It is the same with happiness, which is a great wealth. A happy person can take away the unhappiness of another, for he has enough for himself and more besides for others. Earthly pleasures are the shadows of happiness because of their transitoriness. True happiness is in love, which is the stream that springs from one's soul. He who will allow the stream to run continually in all conditions of life, in all situations, however difficult, will have a happiness which truly belongs to him, whose source is not without, but within. If there is a constant outpouring of love, one becomes a divine fountain, for from the depth of the fountain a stream rises, and on its return it pours upon the fountain, bathing it continually. It is a divine bath, the true bath in the Ganges, the sacred river. When once one has the key to this fountain, one is always purified every moment of one's life, and nothing can stay in the mind causing unhappiness. Happiness alone is natural, and it is attained by knowing and by living naturally. Antipathy turns into malice, and malice culminates in bitterness. To possess it in one's heart is like possessing a poison that clouds the wit and produces obscurity. If one keeps one's heart free from malice, one has accomplished a great deal. For it is in the clear heart that the light from above is reflected. Often, malice of which one is unconscious enters without one's intention. Often the one who possesses malice is quite innocent, for his heart is reflecting the malice projected from another heart. Therefore, care must be taken to keep one's heart free from the impressions and influences coming from others. The question, how can one avoid this, is answered thus: that the heart will focus itself on a person or an influence which is akin to its own quality. That is the nature of the heart. Therefore, even if the impression comes from another, the one who reflects it is responsible for the other's influence. To make the heart reflect good qualities, one must prepare and train it. For it is the good quality of heart that will keep away undesirable impressions and thoughts, so that the heart will only reflect good impressions and desirable influences. As a practice to purify the heart, repeat every morning and every evening, "My thoughtful self. Reproach no one, hold a grudge against no one, bear malice against no one. Be wise, tolerant, considerate, polite, and kind to all." As the cleansing of a metal object produces a shine on it, so does the cleansing of the heart, especially its cleansing from feelings that produce humiliation. When a person thinks, "I have been wrong by acting in a certain way, by saying a certain thing, or by having thought something that should not have crossed my mind," he loses, so to speak, a radiance that even beams out through his countenance, and that is called in Persian abiru, meaning the radiance of the soul. Every person shows from his expression his condition of heart. Therefore, innocence of expression is a sign of purity of heart. A person may be clever, learned, qualified, most able. He may be strong physically or even mentally. He may be wealthy or of high rank. But none of these outside things helps him to retain the glow of the countenance, which depends only upon the purity of the heart. Many know, and some say, that the eyes can tell one everything that is in the heart of man. But fewer there are who know the cause behind this. The eyes are like a thermometer in the center in the head, which is focused on the center of the heart. Every impression that the heart bears, beautiful or ugly, is mirrored upon the center of the head, and so it is reflected accordingly in man's visage, especially in his eyes, which express the most. There are many clever people, but so few there are who may be called wise. The clever ones plot and plan one against another and exchange evil thoughts between themselves. So the deceitful and treacherous, intoxicated by their interest in life, cover their eyes with the cover of selfishness, thus keeping the heart from showing out its light, which alone illuminates the path of every achievement in life. It might seem hard work to empty one's heart of all bad impressions and all feelings, of all bitterness and evil thoughts, and yet it is not nearly so hard as the task of earning one's daily bread. Work in one's everyday life takes most of the day. Emptying the heart of all undesirable things takes but a few moments' silence. It is the desire to erase from the heart every undesirable impression that enables one in time to purify one's heart. Innocence is the real purity, according to the mystic, for innocence is the sign of purity of heart. The intuitive faculties play a greater part in the life of the innocent. People call them simple ones, but nevertheless, innocence often proves more beneficial in life than worldly cleverness. The innocent are oftener blessed by providence than the worldly wise who are always trying to get the best of everyone and to seize every opportunity that may seem in any way advantageous. It is not easy for a clever person to try and become innocent. Innocence is something natural that manifests with the blooming of the heart. It is the sign of the thriving of a spiritual personality. If one can develop anything, it is only this, that one may abstain from trying to be clever and know that a selfish and clever person with all his qualifications of getting the best of another sooner or later comes across a person cleverer than he. Often a clever person finds his own chain tied around his legs. No one has arrived at a higher degree of spirituality without being innocent. Innocence does not mean not knowing. It only means knowing and yet not knowing. A stupid person must not be confused with an innocent person, for the former is blind, whereas the latter only closes his eyes when he wants to. It is really the wise who become innocent on arriving at a stage of perfection in wisdom. There are two kinds of persons who show childlike simplicity in their lives. The silly one who shows childish traits, and the wise one who shows innocence. He alone is capable of removing from the heart of another doubt, deceit, fear, or malice, whose heart is already pure from these things, or who at least can empty his heart of them. There is a weakness of the heart, and there is strength of the heart. The heart's weakness is caused by things it contains that enfeeble it, such as doubt, deceit, fear, and malice. Their absence produces that purity of heart which in itself is a power. This power can be increased by faith, hope, and righteousness. Purity of the heart causes its expansion, and lack of purity makes it narrow. The mystic poet of Hyderabad, Asaf, says, "If the heart is large, it can be the largest of all things." Besides, it is purity alone that opens the doors of the heart. All that hinders that purity stands as a closed door of the heart. The pure-hearted may seem to be thinking, saying, or doing simple things, and yet there is a beauty and charm in all they do. For there is nothing more attractive than light itself. All that is other than light depends upon light to show out its beauty. Light is beauty in itself. Purity of heart is the only condition that allows the inner stream to rise. The pure-hearted see more deeply, though they say little. There is no pretense about them. What they know, they know. What they don't know, they don't know. The pure ones make all pure, for to them all is pure. Their presence makes everyone pure. As pure water is the best tonic, so is contact with the pure-hearted person. When one is able to accomplish this in the spiritual path, there is not much then that remains to be accomplished. A tendency is generally seen in those treading the spiritual path to feel discouraged at having bad impressions of their own faults and shortcomings upon their hearts. They begin to feel that they are too unworthy to have anything to do with things of a sacred nature. But in spite of all the virtue humility has in it, this is a great error. When one acknowledges something wrong in oneself, one gives that wrong a soul out of one's own spirit. And by withdrawing from all that is good and beautiful, spiritual and sacred, instead of developing the spirit of rejecting all errors in time, one becomes a receptacle of what is wrong. One goes on disapproving and yet collecting errors, so producing within oneself perpetual conflict. When man becomes helpless before his infirmities, he becomes a slave to his errors and feels within himself an obedient servant to his adversary. The greater the purity developed in the heart, the greater becomes the power of man. As great is his power within himself, so great becomes his power over others. A hair's breadth can divide power from weakness, though they appear to have as wide a gulf between them as there is between land and sky. Thank you for listening. A little seashell rattling for your listening pleasure. May you find lasting happiness. Please like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next video.